Welcome to DMM Downloads. We are podcasting another conversation about DMM between Jeff Crabtree and me, Rudy Rivera. Jeff and I are teamed together in Northern Colorado in a ministry we call DMM NOCO. DMM NOCO is unleashing disciple-making movements in Northern Colorado, and we thought it a good idea to start a podcast as a way to bring awareness and resourcing to ordinary people who are passionate about making multiplying disciple makers in our natural networks. Thanks for joining us in this journey. We hope you get a DMM download from this conversation. Well, hey guys, we're back on the DMM Downloads podcast. As always, or usually, Jeff and I are together. And this time we have another guest, a friend and a brother out in California. I'm going there next week. Probably not to see Tom, but I wish I could. His name's Tom Marshall. We've met a few times, Tom, at New Generation Summits, and I think in Phoenix, maybe in Chicago. I can't quite remember all the times. But as usual, Jeff and I are back, and we want to talk DMM. We want to share just things that are in our hearts. And specifically today, we want to hear about Tom's heart, just his experience and his expertise, or just his thoughts. I'm going to hand it to Jeff here, and Jeff can take it away a little bit. Go for it, Jeff.
Rudy, we're back again. Can you believe that every week we interface and talk about life and talk about DMM, and then we do this podcast. So good to have Rudy and I together again. And then
Mhm.
our listening audience, wow, you're gonna get a treat today. You get to hear from, as Rudy said, a man by the name of Tom Marshall. And Tom does live in Northern California. I think I've known Tom, I'm not very good with dates. I think Tom and I have known each other for 5 or 6 years together. And we've served on the North American team for the global family called New Generations. So Tom and I have had not just a friendship, but we've co-labored and co-partnered
Mhm.
together in this North American team for New Generations.
Mhm.
And so anyway, Tom's been not just a learner, but a practitioner of DMM. And you're going to be very inspired. And before we let Rudy ask him a question, I just want to highlight that Tom wrote a book that I want to highly suggest that each and every one of you that's listening get the book. It's called The Jesus Strategy. And if you're wherever you're at in the movement world, leaning into DMM, especially if you don't know a lot about DMM or you're exploring DMM, actually, I don't think, Tom, did you even say DMM in the whole book? I think it more was just kind of how did Jesus teach his followers to carry out his vision?
Mhm.
And so I just think it's an absolute incredible resource for the DMM world. And so if you're out there listening, I want to encourage you, get the Jesus strategy. You will learn a lot. It'll be very practical. It'll be things that will enable you to tiptoe into disciple making. And so it's really good. So, Tom, welcome. Glad you're here.
Well,
Good to see you,
thank you.
bro. And so we're going to turn it back over to Rudy. He's going to ask you questions, and then you're going to just be able to download, and the rest of us are just going to sit and learn and enjoy. So, Tom, welcome to DMM Downloads Podcast.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, thanks for coming
Great.
on. Really appreciate it. So, we've been asking this question of all of our guests, and we just think it's a good place to start. Tom, and I mean, I don't know you as well as Jeff knows you, but tell us briefly about yourself and how you were introduced to DMM.
Well, first of all, probably unlike most of your guests, don't come from a full-time ministry background.
Mm.
My vocation or where I made my money was in electronics. I was in the
Mm.
electronics industry, and that paid my bills and kept food on the table. Ended up running a company, building a product my father designed. And so it was a small family business, selling electronic instrument in the calibration field. But ministry has always been a part of what I've been involved with. I have a passion, particularly for making healthy, mature disciples.
Mm.
and did a lot of research on discipleship, studied the navigators and some other programs and worked towards that. And was part of a men's group. We were getting together to challenge one another and strengthen one another to be walking out our faith. And one of the members of the group ended up starting an international ministry, missions, doing the type of work that they were doing locally. It was a city team in San Jose, and the city team in San Jose was ministering to immigrants, poor people, and had a strong program for drug addiction, freeing them from that. And they were wanting to take this internationally. A lot of international people were coming over and wanting to learn from the success that they were having in this program. Somewhere along the line, my friend got involved with David Watson, heard about disciple making movement, and got excited about that. And his name was Harry Brown. Ended up leading the city team arm, international arm originally, and started one of the earlier people engaging in disciple making movement.
Mm.
And so in any case, Harry started to learn about disciple making movement. He started sharing some of the concepts with the men in the 5 people in our men's group. One of the people in the men's group didn't feel like this was biblical. I looked at this and I said, this is the first thing that I've seen that seems to map in how I read the Gospels in the book of Acts. But I got excited about it. And the other couple of guys were, thought maybe, but they weren't, they didn't get excited. They weren't, they didn't see it the way that I saw it. And so I wanted to learn whatever I could about disciple making movement. And so that was probably around 2005. And so I have a long history. I'm one of the grandfathers of in the United States with this. And so I began learning, trying to get information wherever I could. I got involved with a local person in San Jose who was experimenting with disciple making movement in the San Jose area. And we started meeting and talking about disciple making movement. And we actually saw a movement around 2007, 8, 9, somewhere, maybe 8 or 9, 10. We saw several hundred small DBS groups turn into churches, and they were multiplying. And so I got a chance to, well, I wasn't directly involved with it, see how this actually works in an incredible way. And so that was my kind of introduction. Probably the turning point for me was Harry brought a pastor from Cuba who was experimenting with disciple making movement. And they were starting 2 or 3 discovery Bible studies, small groups a week. And I had a strong background in small groups. And I was thinking, how in the world are you finding leaders? I have a hard time finding 2 or 3 leaders a year, let alone 2 or 3 leaders a week. And I kept asking him, he wasn't understanding because I'm coming from a different paradigm than he was. And so finally the interpreter, I realized that we weren't connecting. And he said, Tom, what does the Great Commission say? The Great Commission says, go and baptize and make disciples, baptizing them and teaching them all of my commands. And he said, you left a word out. I said, I did? He said, teaching them to obey all of my commands. I said, well, when did they add that word into that sentence? And so that was a changing point for me. He says, what we look for is people who are able to learn and obey. And we want those people teaching others how to do the same. We don't have to have Bible study leaders who have all this theological knowledge leading the Bible study, because it's not oriented that way. It's oriented towards, how do you read this? How do you put it into practice? And we want people who are putting it into practice to teach others to put it into practice. And that's when the mic dropped for me. Yeah. That was like, wow. Teaching to obey, not just knowledge-based. and that kind of rocked. Then all of a sudden, the stuff I've been learning about discipleship making movement made sense. I hadn't really picked that up, or I hadn't really understood that until that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went on a journey to slowly implement things one at a time and try and make every possible mistake. And so if the goal was to make every mistake just once. And whether things were improved from what I'd done before or fall flat on my face, what do I learn from this? And so apparently I'm that guy who can't learn any other way but to do it by making my own mistakes, stubborn or dense or something. And so it's been a long process of learning disciple making movement, and kind of through that. My friend that Hermie at City Team and I, as we were exploring some of these principles and I've seen some of the success, he and I were teaching people how to, teaching these principles to of disciple making movement, kind of introduction to disciple making movement. And so I was kind of working on different ways of how to explain this, how do you communicate it. And that kind of led into the writing of my book. And I just felt there, I had a lot of experience on how to explain it to people from a church background. And then as I was praying through it, God says, you're really not writing a book of disciple making movement. You're writing a book. What you're exploring is how did Jesus, what did Jesus do? And how did he teach his disciples? And what was he teaching his disciples? And why did he teach them in this way? And when we read the Bible, sometimes we just kind of glaze over some of the crazy stuff that Jesus does and says. And it doesn't strike us how odd until you stop and look at that and think that is really odd. That is not how I would have done that. And so really what I explore in the book is, why does Jesus teach in the way that he does? And it's not pushing a DMM. It's just looking at his patterns, looking at how he teaches. And then I take a look at DMM as this is a way that we try to apply those type of principles. This is why we do things in the DMM world as we do it, and how we try to apply it.
That's great.
Can I go back to something you said about kind of your first group where one guy thought it's unbiblical, and then you just took us to biblical, I think is where you're going, is you see Jesus in the scriptures doing these things. You wrote a whole book on this to help explain that. Can you, I don't necessarily want us to camp on the unbiblical part. I mean, we could probably do a whole podcast on that. But can you just dig down one level deeper on the biblical part, or at least from your perspective?
Sure.
You were convinced back then, and you're still convinced that, just put it in the context for maybe us North Americans. Maybe we're here in Northern Colorado. Anybody listening that says, I'm hearing about these things. Tom, tell me a little bit more about the Bible here.
Well, the first thing is, what was Jesus's message? What was he communicating? The message that I was taught to communicate, the gospel, as I was told, was the atonement. How Jesus was died on the cross, but Jesus didn't talk about his death and resurrection that much. He talked about something different. Well, what did he talk about? He talked about the kingdom of God. So why did he talk about the kingdom of God? Well, a lot of people just say, well, he hadn't died yet, so he couldn't explain it. No, the whole Old Testament teaches this. He could have taken all kinds of stuff from the Old Testament and shown how the atonement is important for people to come into a relationship with him. But he chose a different message, the kingdom of God. And I'm not saying that the atonement isn't an important part of that message, but the message of the gospel is much bigger than just the message of the atonement. And I think, I contend that Jesus started with the kingdom of God, and that's a better place for us to start. It's not as complicated, and it's really more practical. The kingdom of God is, how do we come into a relationship with God? What does that look like to have a relationship with God? And what does it mean to have God as our king? as the person that we serve in our life. And those are the critical founding points. And then we can go into the theology. We hope that people understand the atonement and be grateful that it's not, it's a gift of God. And so even just the way that we approach what we might say evangelism is different in the Gospels than the way I was taught and the way I trained others. I taught people how to present a gospel presentation.
Yeah, wow, that's so good. Jeff, any thoughts that we've been talking about similar thoughts? I know you've shared similar thoughts on our Downloads podcast, but I thought you want to ask there, Jeff, or any thought you want to add on?
Yeah, I've just kind of framed it at times in the language. What Tom was saying is that in Western culture, in this whole gospel of atonement, gospel of salvation, we've really offered to people the benefits package, but maybe not the job description. And I think that's proven in how, if we kind of put if the Western attractional church under the microscope, is people are kind of saying, I'm celebrating, I got my sins forgiven, I'm going to heaven. And that's kind of it. And so anyway, yeah, Tom, that's so good. All that you said was so good. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's I've just kind of framed it in the language that, it's not about the benefits package, even though that's included. It's really about the job description to go and make disciples.
Yeah. I think, Tom, maybe we'll end the episode there. I really love what you're saying there, but it unpacks some more questions for me that I'd love to toss your way, and maybe not surprising. I think maybe thinking about what is that, what difference has that made in your life, Tom? And let me just add this. You guys can't see Tom, but if you know Tom, you know this. Since I met you, Tom, and I'm seeing you again now on Zoom and all of that, your smile, your eyes, they light up the room, bro. And you just seem to have this confident joy. Now I don't know you that well, so maybe you're like, Rudy, you know me. You don't know me at all, bro. I'm the exact opposite. I somehow doubt it. And so I'm just thinking about what is, I mean, 20 something years pursuing God in this journey for you through DMM. But really, like you said, really just going, what is Jesus? What did he mean? What was he saying? How did he do it? And I just sense this. Maybe you could help unpack some thoughts. What has that done for you? And then how have you seen that go further? But I'm going to pause us there. Thanks, Jeff, for that engaging download. In DMM, we like to say that disciples are learners. I know I'm learning a lot from my conversations with you, Jeff. From all of us in DMM NOCO, we hope you got a DMM download from the conversation today. Don't forget to leave this podcast a review wherever you are listening online. If you found this conversation helpful, please head over to our site, dmmnoco.com, where you can find more content for your DMM journey, including a self-paced Habits of a Multiplying Disciple course. The course is designed to give you practical next steps to becoming a DMM practitioner and multiplying disciple maker. You can take that course for free at dmmnoco.com. We will be back next week with another engaging DMM download episode. Until then, may you hear from God through His Spirit and take simple steps of obedience in what you hear.